Did you ever wonder what keeps a man awake at night, even when he seems to have everything? What gnaws at the soul of a person who has achieved wealth, status, and apparent success? We often look at the outward appearance of someone's life, the trophies they've collected, and assume they're immune to the anxieties that plague the rest of us. But what if, behind that facade, lurks a fear so profound, so deeply rooted, that it shapes their entire existence? Today, we're diving into the life of Roger Bank, a man who, on the surface, appeared to have conquered the world, but whose inner landscape was a battlefield of dread. And the question we're asking is, what did Roger Bank fear the most? To understand Roger Bank's deepest fear, we need to understand the man himself. He wasn't born into privilege. He clawed his way up from humble beginnings, driven by an insatiable ambition. He built a business empire, not through inherited wealth, but through relentless work, calculated risks, and a steely determination that bordered on ruthlessness. He was a man who valued control, order, and the tangible results of his efforts. Those who knew Roger Bank described him as a man of few words, but decisive actions. He was meticulous, demanding, and possessed an almost uncanny ability to anticipate market trends. He was a master strategist, a shrewd negotiator, and a force to be reckoned with in the world of business. Yet, beneath this formidable exterior, there was a vulnerability, a hidden fear that dictated his every move. Now, it's easy to assume that Roger Bank, like many successful individuals, feared failure. The fear of losing his wealth, his status, his hard-earned reputation. But that would be too simplistic. While the prospect of financial ruin certainly played a part in his anxieties, his deepest fear went beyond the material. It was something far more profound, something that struck at the very core of his being. To understand this, let's consider his background. Roger Bank grew up in a world of scarcity, where resources were limited and survival was a daily struggle. He witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of poverty, the helplessness of those who lacked control over their circumstances. This early experience instilled in him a deep-seated fear of vulnerability, a fear of being at the mercy of forces beyond his control. He saw the fragility of life, the unpredictable nature of fate, and the ease with which fortunes could be reversed. This realization fueled his relentless pursuit of control, his obsession with building an empire that would shield him from the uncertainties of life. He believed that by accumulating wealth and power, he could create a fortress around himself, a barrier against the chaos of the world. But here's the paradox: the more he tried to control his life, the more he became aware of the things he couldn't control. He couldn't control the passage of time, the inevitability of aging, or the ultimate fate that awaited him. He couldn't control the actions of others, the unpredictable nature of the market, or the unforeseen events that could disrupt his carefully laid plans. This realization, this constant awareness of his own limitations, was the source of his deepest fear. It wasn't just failure, it was the fear of losing control, the fear of being exposed to the vulnerability that he had spent his entire life trying to avoid. He saw the world as a chaotic, unpredictable place, a place where anything could happen at any time. And the thought of being at the mercy of this chaos, of being stripped of his power and control, was unbearable to him. This fear manifested in various ways. He was a workaholic, driven by an insatiable need to stay ahead of the game. He was a perfectionist, obsessed with details and unwilling to delegate authority. He was a micromanager, constantly monitoring and scrutinizing every aspect of his business. He also struggled with trust. He was suspicious of others, always questioning their motives and doubting their loyalty. He surrounded himself with yes men, people who would reinforce his beliefs and never challenge his authority. He found it difficult to form genuine connections, to open himself up to others, because he feared that vulnerability would be exploited. As he aged, this fear intensified. He became increasingly isolated, living in a self-imposed fortress of wealth and power. He saw his mortality approaching, and the thought of losing control over his own destiny filled him with dread. He attempted to control even his own health, obsessively monitoring his vitals, adhering to strict diets, and engaging in rigorous exercise regimes. But even this was a futile attempt to stave off the inevitable. In his final years, Roger Banks became a recluse, withdrawing from the world and isolating himself from those around him. He lived in a state of constant anxiety, haunted by the fear of losing control, of being exposed to the vulnerability that he had spent his entire life trying to avoid. So, what did Roger Banks fear the most? It wasn't just failure. It was the fear of losing control, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of acknowledging his own limitations. He feared the chaos of the world, the unpredictability of life, and the inevitability of fate. He feared the things he couldn't control. His life was a testament to the destructive power of fear, a cautionary tale about the dangers of trying to control everything. He built an empire, but he also built a prison of his own making, where he was trapped by his own anxieties. He spent his life running from vulnerability, but in the end, it was vulnerability that consumed him. He never learned to accept his limitations, to embrace the uncertainties of life, to find peace in the midst of chaos. He remained a prisoner of his own fears, a victim of his own relentless pursuit of control. His story reminds us that true strength lies not in controlling everything, but in accepting the things we cannot control. It reminds us that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a fundamental part of being human. It reminds us that true success is not measured by wealth or power, but by the ability to find peace and contentment in the midst of life's uncertainties. Roger Banks' life was a masterclass in what happens when fear drives every decision. He amassed wealth, power, and a reputation for being unstoppable. Yet, he never found peace. He never found contentment. He never found the ability to simply be. His fear was so profound it became his prison. A prison he constructed brick by brick, dollar by dollar, deal by deal. A prison where he was both the architect and the sole inhabitant. The irony of his existence is that in his relentless pursuit of control, he became a slave to his fear of losing it. He was a man who lived in a constant state of anxiety, a man who never truly experienced the joy of life. His story is a reminder that fear can be a powerful motivator, but it can also be a destructive force. It can drive us to achieve great things, but it can also prevent us from experiencing the fullness of life. Ultimately, Roger Banks' life serves as a stark reminder that true freedom lies not in controlling everything, but in accepting the things we cannot control. It lies in embracing our vulnerability, in finding peace in the midst of chaos, and in living a life that is truly our own. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.